So during the period of time when we had built a place, in the process of building a place, David, we had some experience with people within Waco. Uh, Being in Dave's band, we played at a place called Q Sticks for a while, and we started to develop some friendships there. David, you started went to some gun shows here and there, and he met a guy named Henry McMahon. Henry McMahon was a licensed firearm dealer, and he owned a place called Hewitt Handguns. And he became very good friends with David, and he actually considered David to be his preacher. He would come out for studies. So Henry knew that there's certain firearms there was a big bans coming, and that some of these firearms, and especially ammunition, was going to double and triple in value. So he started to teach. David Koresh and Paul Fata, I think, started to go to some of the gun shows. Someone else too. The main guys. Henry McMahon, David used to go to some gun shows, and they started to learn about firearms, what to buy, what to sell, what's going to increase in value. So they very much looked at it as a business and as an investment. They started to buy a lot of firearms, and especially a lot of rounds of ammunition. I think the 2 rounds were going to be quite valuable. So they started what the government called a stockpile. We called an inventory, and I mean that 100% sincerely and honestly. That stockpile was an inventory. Now, I'm not going to say there weren't some scriptural ramifications for the time of trouble at the end, and there were people here that had guns when I first showed up. They'd hunt, that kind of thing. Some people would shoot on the firing range from time to time, but it was nothing that was out of the ordinary for Texas. And I say that because I had drummers that played in other bands on the same stage that we did that would come out and shoot at our firing range with us. And we became friends. We'd have a cookout, we'd shoot at the firing range. I was from Maine. The whole gun thing for me was not a factor. Not that people from Maine don't shoot guns. There's a lot of hunters up in Maine. But I wasn't raised with it. So I was surprised at the normality of it here in Texas, okay? And where I think, for some people living in a big city where a gun would really flip them out because of the crime rate, if you live in Texas, you see a totally different consciousness. And that's my point, is that it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't demonized. It wasn't something that I thought was wrong. It was just a part of the American heritage, and people came out and had a good time with it. So anyway, so yes, there were quite a bit of firearms here that were coming in. Apparently, there was a period of time where people that had left the movement early on, even before me, a guy named Mark Bro, David talked about him a lot. He was like a brother. He was like David Koresh's star student. And he ended up leaving and turning against David and basically, causing a lot of problems with some of the other people that had left the group. And they started, some people were very bitter because family members stayed with David while they had left. And so it just seemed like there was quite a few people that were fighting against David, and they were saying that he was doing some things with some of the women here and some of the kids. There was a lot of talk about abuse for the children, which, I personally did not see. I saw some women spank their children, but not to the point as one of the former people that left, to the point of bleeding or anything like that. I never saw anything like that. But that was some of the accusations that were being made. So to make a long story short, the proper authorities that are supposed to deal with that, the state Child Protective Services, came out on 2 occasions. They interviewed the kids. They had a case against David. They dropped the case. They were not able to find significant evidence of any kind of child abuse. And I personally didn't see kids being abused at all. The kids were very well behaved. They were very happy. They were schooled here. They had friendship here. One of the things that I think that's interesting, Heather Jones told me recently, she's 35 now. Heather Jones was one of the children that came out during the siege. She was 9. She said that she didn't even know what racism was until she went to school in Waco. That's when she learned that she was not supposed to mix with the black kids. She had no idea because everyone mixed with everyone out here. Then she got to the public school system, and all of a sudden she was supposed to hang out with the white kids. So it's that kind of thing that bothers me, where people don't understand about who the people were and who the children were, and they just assume that these kids were all abused and dying to get out. The kids were very happy here. the people that I saw. Even the mothers were very happy here, and everyone seemed to get along. So after the state dropped their case, apparently the Fed started to look into the guns that were being bought and sold. And so they raided Henry McMahon, the ATF did, and they were asking Henry a lot of questions about the yellow sheets they had for David Koresh. In other words, Henry, why are you selling all these firearms to this guy, David Koresh? And then Henry said, well, I'll tell you what, let's talk to him. He went in the other room, he got on the phone, he goes, David, the ATF are here, and they're asking me a lot of questions about you. And David says, I'll tell you what, Henry, if they have any questions on any of the yellow sheets, you send them out to Mount Carmel, I will show them the firearms. Better yet, put them on the phone. And Henry McMahon claims in his testimony that he went to Davey Aguilera, who was heading the raid for the ATF, and he said, I get David Koresh on the phone, and he says he'd like to talk to you, invite you out to Mount Carmel. And Davey Aguilera went like that, like, no, put down the phone. And so they were literally invited out to the property to meet with David, and they chose not to.
I'll just make a small correction. David Aguilera was, writing the affidavit for the warrant.
So was it Chuck Sarabin? Who was the?
Yeah, David Aguilera was not one of the commanders, so there were two other guys who were commanders. So we'll just put that on the record.
Okay.
But